So I'm filming this now. I'll warn you guys, I'm going to be talking about In a Holidaze. There are some spoilers throughout it. I also ramble a lot because I am not used to writing a review like this or doing any kind of review like this. I am probably going to next time have to outline exactly what I need to say instead of just making these kind of notes. But I wanted to warn you guys before you join. But let's get to that intro. Hey y'all, welcome back to, I don't know what day of Vlogmas this is, but we're doing the first of the reviews. So I've got here just some Crystal Light, like it's the raspberry lemonade Crystal Light with the watermelon seltzer water. I thought it would work well because one of the few drinks I remember from the book I'm about to talk about, In a Holidaze, she talks about how the main character May, her love interest Andrew, remembers how exactly she likes her seltzer water. So I thought it'd be kind of fun, something different. Also, yes, I'm wearing a holiday sweater. Can't really see much of it, but it says I'm having a meltdown. And in that case, again, I have it because kind of the thing in the book that like we hear about it very early on. It's like in the first chapter we learn about Andrew's sweater getting ruined by the dog, but then it comes back later to kind of be like the linchpin of like, oh, everything she was saying was true, when again the corgi, I forgot the corgi's name, destroyed the sweater. So kind of a spoiler. Whoops. I'm really bad at this. I've not done a book review except in terms of classes in a long time. Just generally though, In a Holidaze is a book written by Christina Lauren. So kind of the Google Books blurb when I'm reading this off of my laptop is, it's the most wonderful time of the year, but not for Maylin Jones. She's living with her parents, hates her going nowhere job, and has been made a romantic heir of epic proportions, but perhaps the worst is yet of all is this the last Christmas May will spend at her favorite place in the world, the snowy Utah cabin where she and her family have spent every holiday ever since she was born. Mentally melting down as she drives away from the cabin for a final time, May throws out what she thinks is a simple plea to the universe. Please, show me what will make me happy. The next thing she knows, tires screech, metal collides, and everything goes black. But when May gasps awake, she's on the airplane bound for Utah, where she begins the same holiday all over again, with one hilarious disaster after another sending her back to the plane. May must figure out how to break free from the strange time loop as she finally get her true love under the mistletoe. So, it is a Groundhog's Day kind of scenario. That's a reference I make in the book originally. For general thoughts of it, I liked it. It was very fluffy. I will say there is two kind of spicy scenes, but they're not really spicy at all. It's more like, it's one that's like, things get described a bit, but it's like what you'd see maybe in like a movie, like a PG-13, maybe R-rated movie that's going to be on television, where you're kind of like, this is a little awkward, but nothing that like is going to be graphic. Like there's nothing really graphic about it at all. So just keep that in mind. So I listened to it on an audiobook. I use Libro FM because I think I'm dyslexic. I honestly don't know. I just read very slowly also, generally. So I like to listen to the audiobooks so it kind of can help me keep pace. And I use Libro.fm because it is, you can buy the audiobooks through small bookstores. So I buy mine through Poor Richard's Books, which is a bookstore in Frankfurt. So I did really enjoy the book. I thought it was very sweet. Things that I really did appreciate about it was, again, because she's in this time loop, the question of how do we approach traditions, especially as we get older. Because May is 26. There's two other adult children, Andrew and Theo, who are kind of the two main dudes in this like love story. Andrew is the main love interest, and like Theo is Andrew's younger brother, and May and Theo are the same age. So it was always a thing of like, oh, those two will end up together. Yeah, but May is in love with Andrew. Also in this whole situation, in the original like timeline, May and Theo get really drunk and make out with each other, and Andrew sees that and he's like, okay, you guys are together, and May is like, oh my gosh. So that just adds on to all the complications. Also, there are 3 other kids. There is her younger brother, Miles, who's like 17. He's a senior in high school. And then a set of twin 5-year-olds, which actually does get into a critique I have about the book a bit, is that it felt like there was a lot of characters that, like, we get their names. I've honestly forgotten most of them. But like, I wish we'd had more interactions of May with some of these other characters. So, in total, I probably should actually explain how this like family dynamic works, because it's a combination of actual immediate family and found family, but found family from the adults. So you've got a combination of May's family, you've got her mom and dad, who are actually divorced, and then May and Miles. And then you've got Rick and Lisa. I do remember their names. Rick and Lisa, who are May and Theo's, who are Theo and Andrew's parents. They're also a couple. Then you've got Benny, who's Uncle Benny, who's this Australian dude who was roommates with the dad and Rick. And also, as you find out later, at one point Benny and Lisa actually dated for a very brief time in college. And then you've got another couple who are, one of them's Kyle. I cannot remember the other guy's name for the life of me, and I was trying to Googling it around, but I could not remember. And also in that case, so not Kyle, but the other one. So Kyle, Benny, Rick, and the dad were all roommates in college, and then the mom and Lisa were roommates. So that's kind of how all of them like found each other and had been keeping up these traditions. And so then, yeah, the parents have May and Miles. Then you've got Andrew and Theo, and then the twins. And Benny is not married, does not have any kids that we know of. I don't think Benny has any illegitimate children, but yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of characters where I kind of would have been interested to have seen May's relationship with more of them, because we don't get much of a relationship between her and Miles, and it was kind of getting to a point where it's at a critical time for them, really, of Miles is about to go off to college, so that really is a period of time when that dynamic between siblings does change. My sisters and my middle sister is like a similar age gap between like May and her brother, so that was a big switch, like change in our relationship when I would have gone off to college. We also purposefully, it kind of makes sense she does not like talk to Theo much, because she was so annoyed with him after the night that they'd made out that she kind of just held a grudge against him, even though he didn't know why. But he also kind of pulls a hurt puppy thing that I'm just like, this feels a little too much like, oh, everybody should love me, and maybe I'm just a little bit jilted about guys from like Reddit. But yeah, we just mostly get her relationship between May and Andrew as they really start to realize their feelings for each other. And of course we get like Benny and May, because Benny is kind of the person that May always goes to. We don't even get much of a dynamic between her and her parents. Like, we know a little bit, but not a lot, and we have one conversation between Rick and May, and that's actually where we find out that Lisa and Benny at one point had dated. Because he's like, yeah, things can initially go really sour, but we all kind of come around for each other. We're all family. I did kind of like, I have mixed feelings about kind of the stakes. So as you like, we kind of see throughout this, she keeps on kind of like dying, especially early on in the book, because of this time loop. Because what happens is she kind of dies and then comes back to the plane. And that happens about 3 times. And so we do kind of have, especially as she gets further along in that like 3rd time loop of like, oh my gosh, is something going to happen? So the stakes are high, but also kind of feels a little bit low because, again, she can just kind of go back. But then you kind of wonder, is she going to take the lesson she learns? Because there's more than just like, oh, finding the true love, which Andrew is her true love, at least in this. Spoilers again. But also is like, okay, she has to come to terms with, as we get older, we can't be keeping, like, the traditions have to like kind of grow and evolve as we get older, like, and that is something I definitely did appreciate because, like, again, I'm 25, I'm almost the same age as, like, May's like 26, so it's that thing of like, we still in so many ways grasp on to like the family traditions we had. We want things to be the same because we're having our quarter life crisis. We are scared as we're becoming adults, but we need to be like kind of flexible, and some things can stay the same. Like the main one in this kind of that I can think of that kind of becomes that push of like, oh, traditions can be more flexible, is they always had a like snow creature competition, and it was always kind of a very specific like thing that they were doing, but then they turned it into like that time around, instead of it being just like a sculpture competition, they had a snowball fight and they had fun with it. It was great, and they just like kind of let go. They didn't force anything. Some of the other things is that like as we get older, we need to be taking on more responsibilities around like the seasons of like helping cook, because it can be exhausting on our parents. I think of like as I've gotten older with like Thanksgiving, I'm there with my like aunt and uncle. I'm the one that helps with a lot of the like early prep work. I don't do as much as like the day of. I go, and my big thing is to do like the prep work the day before so we can have everything running much more smoothly the day of. So that was something I really did appreciate about the story. I also thought the banter was pretty witty. Sometimes I do wonder, as I mentioned, kind of should they have had maybe her go back one more time as she started to have more of these like flirtationship relationship stuff with Andrew. Like maybe they kissed at one point and she goes back again. Something happens, she goes back. I think maybe that would have been an interesting thing for her to kind of grapple with that idea. But also maybe that just would have been too awkward and she'd be like, screw it, I've already kissed both of the boys, I just cannot handle it. Who knows? But yeah, like I said, I wish, also I'm just looking back, again, I think side characters should have been fleshed out more, talked more about like Theo's relationship more, prior to the like time they were making out. Like, how were things going for the rest of that trip? How were they acting towards each other? She just keeps on talking about him like he was some gross frat boy. Let's go over that more. Or, I don't know. We were not getting a lot of interactions with that. I would have loved an interaction with her and the twins maybe, or the twins' parents. I think that kind of would have been a fun one, especially because that maybe would have been a little bit more, especially with Kyle, and I cannot remember Kyle's husband's name, because he's actually the one that was the roommate. Like, having the two of them, like, kind of have this, like, where, like, the outsider from the, like, nuclear, like, two moms really wanting their, like, children to marry kind of thing. Having somebody that's, like, outside of being like, yeah, we've watched you guys grow up for years. This is kind of what we're, like, thinking. But I'm not sure. I also did appreciate, because that, again, and that whole thing with there was multiple discussions about identity crises, because both the one dude was having an identity crisis where he dyed his hair like completely black, was working out a bunch because he felt like he was so old, because I'm assuming he was like in his late 40s, early 50s. But then also May is having this like the quarter life crisis of wondering, what the heck am I doing with my life? Because at that point it's like you've got friends who are getting married and having children, and it's not like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be happy, or is this a yay, or like okay kind of thing with a pregnancy, for example. But like she's in a dead-end job, and I can really kind of relate to that. Like, not that grad school is a dead-end job, but like there's just this thing of like you're kind of stuck in a limbo. And I definitely feel that. I feel, because I've stayed in academia and that was not my plan. and that's not where I plan to be the rest of my life. Being in academia has made things like just kind of hanging, and it feels like I'm going nowhere. I don't really like how some of it got like resolved, but like of her, because she just like completely quits, which I'm like, okay, sure, go for it. Not in this economy, but go for it. And then immediately deciding, yeah, it's totally okay for me just to move with Andrew. That made me a little bit hesitant. Like, I'll be honest, the epilogue wrapped things up in too neat of a bow. Like, I get it, it's a romance with some comedy in it, but I was like, no, I need more like, oh, what have I done with my life? But that's just me being a cynical person. The romance aspect of it, I liked a lot. I did also appreciate the fact that, like, there was, like, grand gestures, but also small gestures of, like, them just laying underneath the tree and enjoying the twinkling lights. And the fact that he picked up a bunch of the, like, Hershey's Kisses that were, like, the white chocolate ones. There's, like, some very sweet moments there. I guess also, God, I think I covered my thoughts on it. I did think, yeah, a lot of the dialogue was funny, and a lot of it felt very real. And the dialogue was really funny, specifically between May and Benny, because Benny had some very funny quips, and I thought there was also some good, like, kind of foreshadowing on some of the stuff, especially in the fact that, again, another spoiler, Benny ends up buying the cabin, because May's like, oh, yeah, Rick and Lisa don't tell anybody until the last day that they're going to sell it because it's expensive. It's in a really ritzy part of Utah that they were able to buy in way back in the day. Now, it's one of those things where it's too much for them to handle, which also becomes a bit of a fight that her and Andrew have, because May is so determined to save the cabin. Like, she's okay with, like, changing up tradition, but there's something really special about that one spot, which also I definitely do feel, because that was something that when my paternal grandfather passed away, I was really worried about what was going to happen to the house. He and my grandmother had lived there for, at that point, like 50 plus years. My grandmother's still alive, but she was also like, maybe I'll just move into a nursing home or something. And just also when my grandfather passed, it was kind of like, oh, that means at some point my grandmother's going to pass, and I just had not thought about, like, that side of the family, like, and them passing away. But after my grandmother had decided to move into a nursing home, my aunt bought the house, and so she has renovated it. She's done her own things with that house, but this house is still here, so it's kind of helped in that, like, okay, yeah, at some point it will probably no longer be in the family, but for right now we still have that, like, tie. Even if it looks different, I still know if I go to that specific house, I will have family there. And in some ways, it'll still have that basement smell, and it'll still feel weird because, again, I'm not used to walking on a basement. There's something about the floors. Yeah. But yeah, that feeling of, like, okay, there's something to be said about still keeping pieces, even if things get changed, about having that, like, anchor point is great. Because I do think that's probably a lot of what, like, 20-something-year-olds are going through. It's like, we've got to change, but we still desperately are clinging for an anchor point, and the holidays are kind of where that comes about, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas or some other holiday. But yeah, also, I will acknowledge, now that I think about it, and I'm also just thinking about my sweater, I did not like how she did end up telling, like, the others really about the time loop. Like, she told Benny, and there's a funny thing about, like, Benny, the reason that Benny believes her each time is that she knows about Benny working at some, like, kind of a skeezy bar in Sedona. But then she also kind of tells everybody else when she's having, like, a crisis. Not a huge, I did not like that scene much. But, like, that's also how Andrew knows, and Andrew finds out about, like, because then later on, the dog does destroy his sweater, and that's when he realizes, and that's when he gets all pissy, because he goes, like, I wasn't your first choice. Like, dude, depending on the Australians' eggnog, because I think it was Benny's, maybe it was Rick's. Either way, because Rick is, I think, is a teacher, and Benny is and Australian. Either way, they probably drank a lot, so like, of course, their eggnog was gonna be strong. But like the just moping of the guys, I did not appreciate at all, because both of them moped a lot of like, oh, woe is me, and I'm like, dudes, you don't need to go woe is me. I found that a little annoying. May, I identified with her a lot. Though. Editing Obi here, I should probably rank this book. I would probably put it at a 4 out of 5, I think. It's something where if a friend was like, I want kind of a fluffy Christmas read that's like a one-off, definitely recommend this to them. I don't know how it like would read as just like print, but listening to the audiobook, it was great. I really liked the reader in that, so like would definitely recommend if you're looking for something fluffy that also very much attacks the like kind of crisis that a lot of 20-something-year-olds feel around the holidays, around family, where you're still the kid but you're an adult. So yeah. God, that's so rambly. I swear my next review, I'll try to keep it more streamlined. This is going to be so much fun to edit. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!